The forefathers of most Singaporean Chinese left China and settled in various parts of Southeast Asia before moving to Singapore. For example, Lee Kuan Yew's father was born in Indonesia and Goh Keng Swee was born in Malacca. Let's start our story at Parameswara. When Singapore was destroyed, the king fled and founded Malacca, where many Chinese settled. On the east coast of the peninsula, there was a kingdom called Patani, where some Chinese settled. The Chinese at both Malacca and Patani were Minnan, speaking the southern Min language. Those at Malacca were from Quanzhou or Quan Prefecture, and those at Patani were from Chaozhou or Chao Prefecture. Incidentally, nobody speaks Hokkien in China. I'll just digress a little because it's interesting to note that several languages, such as Eastern Min or Central Min, are spoken in Fujian or Hokkien province, and what we call Hokkien is actually Southern Min or Minnan. Likewise, nobody speaks Chinese in China too. The Chinese speak several hundred different languages, none called Chinese. For most of China's history, the language of administration is Mandarin, Guanhua. And what was standard Mandarin pronunciation? Obviously that would depend on where the capital was, Beijing or Kaifeng or Chang'an, etc. But I digress. Let's get back to the story. It wasn't just accent or dialect that separated the Chinese and Malacca from Patani. The arrivals in Malacca were from Quanzhou, which was the busiest port in China, and Marco Polo described it as one of the greatest ports in the world. It was also Admiral Zheng He's staging base and supply depot for all his expeditions. So, the Quanzhou Chinese would settle in major ports such as Luzon, Batavia, or Malacca, and set up trades among these cities. They learned to deal with bureaucracy, and some became part of the establishment after some time. On the other hand, rural Chaozhou or Chao Prefecture was far from Guangzhou, neglected by the provincial government, and exacerbated by heavy taxes, inflation, and greedy officials. Secret societies took over local affairs. Land shortages, famine, and rural poverty pushed the Chaoshan people to leave China. Just in case you haven't noticed, Chaoshan is a word made by shortening and combining Chaozhou and Shantou. They settled away from colonial ports in places such as Tanjung Pinang, where they do slash and burn agriculture, or shifting cultivation. They also settled in Patani, and probably also in Kedah and Perak. All three were vassals of Siam. To avoid Siamese subjugation, the Sultan of Kedah asked for British protection when he leased out Penang. Francis Light founded the trading port on the island in 1786. The arrivals from China were from Jiangzhou because maritime trade was forbidden for much of the Ming dynasty. Jiangzhou was China's only overseas trading port. After tin was discovered in Larut, other groups of Chinese made their way into Perak. Folks from Guangdong province made up one group, the Yixing, or Yihin in Minnan language. The company was also known as the Sixian Company, or the Company of Four Counties. Huizhou, Xingning, which is today known as Taishan or Toishan in Cantonese, Gugang, and Zhaoqing. Huizhou was populated only by the Hakka people, while Xingning, Gugang, and Zhaoqing were inhabited by both Hakka and Yue Chinese. The leaders of the Yixing were Hakka from the Huizhou prefecture. Other migrants from the same province joined the Haishan Company. This rival company is also known as the Wuxian Company, or the companies of 5 counties, because its members were natives of Zhengchen, Panyu, Sunde, Nanhai, and Dongguan counties. The Cantonese inhabited all 5 counties, while the Hakka inhabited just Zhengchen, Nanhai, Dongguan. Because the Hakka from Zhengchen were numerically the most dominant members of the rival company, they led the Haishan. The two companies mined tin in the Larut district, a swamp between the Perak River watershed and the ocean, while the Yixing Company worked at Klen Baru on the northern side of the district. The Haishan worked at Klen Phua, which is the wettest place in Malaya. 4 Larut wars broke out between 1861 and 1874 as they fought over the financial rewards of tin mining. The leader of the Yixing was captured and executed during the Second War. Huizhou migrants left Larut and went to the mines in Selangor, leaving the leadership of the Yixing to the Taishanese from Sinning. They were originally members of He or Ho Hap Se in Cantonese. The Larut War spilled into Penang. On the island, the Yixing Company comprises Chaoshan people who fought the Jiante Company or Kiantic in the Minnan language. The Jiante comprises Zhangzhou merchants. A Hakka association was also divided. The entire association was made up of members from the Yongting County and Tapu district. It is Yongting and Taipu in the Hakka language. Since Yongting is in Fujian province, the Yongting Hakka sided with the Zhangzhou merchants, and the Tapu Hakka swore an oath of 9 district brotherhood with the Chaoshan at the Hanjiang Ancestral Temple. Also, this Larut War's account is different from Wikipedia's. Let's look at the trail of money and rethink the relationship between language and conflict among the Chinese. As the Chinese spoke different languages, they divided labor according to language. This simplified training and encouraged cooperation. Collaboration was also about strength in numbers to defend mining territories. The Hakka worked the mines. The Cantonese built formworks, scaffoldings, bridges and water systems, and huts for mining camps. The tin merchants were all Hakka at first. They got loans from the Zhangzhou and the Chaoshan merchants at Penang, and they borrowed from the Quanzhou merchants at Malacca. In turn, the Minnan merchants got credit from European merchants because they had privileged links to these sources of capital. The Malay rulers of Perak also sat on the food chain. They issued mining permits and collected taxes. Differences within the royal family led Na Ibrahim to support the Haishan and Raja Abdullah to support the Yixing. During the Third War, the Yixing were outnumbered by the Haishan. Now, led by the Taishanese from the He, they gathered allies, including the Yixing from Kiran district. The Yixing folks from Kiran district were Chaoshan. They drove the Haishan out of Larut. Jiante society supplied firearms to the Haishan during the Fourth War to make up for the lack of numbers. The British intervened after the Fourth and Last War. Peace was established. The Yixing were given permits to a new mine at Kamunting, about 5 kilometers north of Larut. Larut was renamed Taiping, where the Haishan remained.